Hi everyone. Um, Welcome back to my tarot reading. I am doing something a little different today. I have been getting a few sort of intuitive messages lately, and I just kind of wanted to explore that a little bit with everyone. So the phrase that's been really kind of floating around in my head is, or the phrase, the idea of ego death, right? So I had to look it up because I wasn't entirely sure what it meant. So I guess the definition of ego death is the disappearance of an individual's sense of self or the removal of one's perception of oneself as an entity separate from one's social or physical environment. So that could be like dissolution of ego or ego loss, and it's described as from those who have experienced it like a feeling as like a form of dying or death of some sort. So it's accompanied with like a sense of being one with the universe or a sense of profound loss. And I just am trying to kind of figure out like what that's been kind of triggering for me, in a sense, like why am I receiving that kind of message? And so I figured I'd pull a couple of cards just to see what, that kind of message it means. So let's begin. Also, if none of this resonates with you, then please move on. So I have one card pulled already. Again, I would like to pull another one for context, even though I have some ideas of what this may mean. So right now we have the Two of Wands. And the Queen of Swords. So I'm thinking that there is definitely some kind of choice to be had with choosing to have an ego death or to not have one. And it could be it could be completely different from that. Remember that this is kind of, just my, intuitive message and what I'm receiving. So I think also with the Queen of Wands, it's also about really considering the positives and negatives of going on such a journey as to experience ego death. And I think, there's definitely like a choice, and one choice has to be the right choice, which is, of course, the right choice is ego death here. Which is funny because I don't like to really have such black and white kind of choices. I like to kind of be free of, sort of interpretation of making or having the illusion of choice, right? So I think that's important to note, is that we really do have this kind of illusion of choice. Tell me more. We have the High Priestess here. She is definitely someone that is kind of like a figure that, like, we can't, she's kind of guiding us, and unfortunately we can't really know what is going to happen. I mean, obviously we won't physically die. this is more of a sense of a spiritual sort of reincarnation, sort of rebirth. And I think that with the High Priestess here, it's we don't know what it's going to be like unless we actually do it. This is going to help remove some sort of mental blocks. So we have the Seven of Wands here. And with the removal of these mental blocks, I think that this idea of ego death is just going to like really kind of bring in some kind of new way of thinking about things and a new way of experiencing our world, our physical world, and our spiritual world as well. And we have the moon. So what did I say, like, about not fully knowing and kind of embracing that sort of unknown side of ourselves, and kind of really looking into the shadow self and sort of releasing these kind of blocks that sort of hinder us from moving forward. We have the Four of Swords. I originally read this when I first pulled it as the Three of Swords, but I think in this instance it can be kind of read as the Four of Swords in terms of a way of moving on from trauma and sort of processing that sort of unknown aspect of ourselves. We have the Page of Cups here. So with the Page of Cups, I think that this is going to be more of a kind of an emotional beginning for us, right? So things like starting to really receive the gifts of the universe and to give back to the universe. We have Justice, and I'm getting a lot of like I don't really know how to explain it in words quite yet. I think that with this, justice is not necessarily about like the rule of law. I think this has to do more with finding like your true self and being like just with yourself and really learning to let go of sort of like institutional kinds of like holding back of things that really kind of bind you to a certain rule of law. So we have the Tower next. And I think with the Tower, this is all about just letting go. I get the image of like trust falls, like you know how when you're in a gym class in high school or something and you have to practice trust falls with your classmates. It's just kind of like that. It's learning to kind of trust the process of letting go and really sort of trusting your fate to the universe. I'm going to pull a clarifier card because we have the King of Wands and I'm not entirely sure how to interpret this. So, okay, I see the King of Wands as kind of like a messenger kind of figure here. And I think of like the Greek messenger god Hermes because of, if you look real close, like the hat or whatever the King of Wands is, wearing on his head kind of reminds me of like the wings on Hermes' head. So something like, or receiving some kind of message. And I think with the Seven of Pentacles, this could be something about like focusing on what really matters to you, in terms of ego death. So I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, because I think with ego death, you want to sort of give up and relinquish all of these sort of possessions and material things. So I think it's more like a challenge of like how to really make this choice of whether to do it or not. And I think, I think that in this instance, the right thing to do is actually just to give up your wealth and material possessions in order to obtain this sort of higher sense of oneness with the universe. So we have the Eight of Cups. And I think this is more like a sense of like languishing, kind of like not really knowing what to do with yourself. And I think like this is kind of funny because it's like how I've been feeling over the past couple of days. It's just like not really knowing where to go from here. Really kind of looking inward and having that sense of like self-discovery, of rediscovery of yourself, basically, and kind of losing yourself to that sort of feeling. We're closing out a chapter of sort of physical existence, I think. We have the World, and I think with this message, it's all about really becoming one with the universe and just kind of having this higher sense of enlightenment. sort of, yeah, I think that's what I mean. And it's going to be kind of a challenge. You know, with the Seven of Pentacles earlier in the reading, and the, you know, sort of Eight of Cups, as well as this card, the Four of Pentacles. I think this is really just about really focusing inward and deciding what is the right option. And I mean, we all know what the right option is in this sense. So really kind of reevaluating your life choices and deciding that maybe material possessions aren't all they are cracked out to be. So I think it's, yeah, that's interesting. And it's going to be hard for us to kind of let go, right? Because as humans, we don't like change. We have the Nine of Wands. We don't like change. We feel kind of a responsibility to all of the things that are physically around us, things that we think matter, and they really don't. So it's, again, it's all about like letting go, and like we like to have control over things, and not having control over everything is kind of like what makes us tick in a way. So we have the Emperor. And I think with the Emperor, this is really just about making the logical choice of like knowing when to let go, and sort of trusting that the universe just, it has your back. Like, you are protected. You are just a divine kind of being. And we're going to get pushback. We have the Devil. Again, this is all about that kind of going back and forth about whether or not you really want to do this. And this ego death idea and concept is just really kind of playing at you, right? So it's all about giving in, but not giving up. And I think that's an important sort of point to make in this sense, because the Devil, I think it represents yourself, but it also represents the, you know, the temptation to like to make the wrong choice, to hold on to those things that you think have meaning, but they really don't. And again, I'll pull a clarifier card for this, because we have the King of Swords. I think this is all about like really understanding your options. And in the image, the King of Swords is doing something like this, like the number 3, like with his hands right there. So something about the number 3 maybe. Oh, you know what? I just it could represent like the Holy Trinity, or for those of you who are more religious than spiritual, it could be like a triquetra, like anything with the number 3. Um, so okay, so it's about like almost like a loop, like this sort of eternal kind of mentality. And this is a fitting card for this. The Fool, right? Taking this leap of faith to do whatever it is that you are doing. This ego death experience is really just kind of about really taking that leap of faith, kind of doing the trust fall, and going into the unknown, especially with the moon right here, as well as the High Priestess. So really giving into the unknown, but not necessarily giving up. And I think that, like, it's important to really consider the aspects before you take that leap of faith, and to really kind of focus on what is beneficial for sort of everyone, I think, instead of just, the self, and forming that kind of selfish kind, sort of choice of choosing not to do this ego death. And it may take time, and it's not going to be an easy process, because, right, we had the devil, and we had like this sort of internal conflict, this external conflict as well, with the pentacles and sort of earthly possessions, because that's really, in the end, that really doesn't matter, with the sense of ego death. So I think it's just important to recognize that sometimes the feeling of like languishing, and this feeling of like loss and kind of helplessness, is also kind of associated with the ego death. And I really believe that it means something greater, like a giving something up for the overarching kind of so it's hard to explain, I guess. I think what I mean is that it's like giving something up so that everyone can have this sense of belonging, and like higher experience, right? This sort of like oneness with the universe. So I guess, yeah, that's all I have. And I hope that this touched upon some important topics that have been kind of going around lately. Um, and if I'm, just totally off base, it's, that doesn't really matter, because, if it doesn't resonate, then just move on. So, until next time, bye everyone.